performative value, unfortunately, because the people involved were quite animated, and that's sometimes the nature of these things. So Claire O'Brien has been working very diligently to compile a series of packages which we're going to broadcast over the next 2 days, which hopefully will shed some light on the issues surrounding the treaty. And she first off spoke to Joe Noonan, who is a solicitor and was heavily involved in the Crotty case. And you're probably wondering, what is the Crotty case? And if you haven't been following the issues closely, you won't be familiar with it. So that was the first question that Claire posed to Joe Noonan.
So, Joe Noonan, would you be able to tell us who Raymond Crotty was exactly and why he felt it necessary to go to the courts in 1986?
Yes, Ray Crotty was a farmer originally from Kilkenny, and he turned into academic work and research and became very widely respected as an agricultural economist. He worked for the World Bank. I think he was offered a job by the European Commission, ironically, one time, and he had turned it down. And when the Single European Act was published in 1986, he read it, and he formed the view that it was giving away significant power to the European communities. And he took legal advice about whether that was constitutional. And the advice to Raymond Crotty was that it appeared not to be within the power of the government to give away certain powers that the people had trusted the government to exercise on their behalf. And so the advice was that it was worthy to go to court and to ask the court for a ruling on it. It was interesting at the time because the government was saying that this was just a minor tidying up treaty. And we have echoes of that claim, of course, now about the Lisbon Treaty. And so the court was able to look at this and came to the view, a very strongly expressed view, that Mr. Crotty was right. This is a significant step, and it was something that the government, as a trustee of the powers that the people gave to it, could not give away without the people's permission.
And what particular powers was he most concerned about?
Raymond Crotty, as an economist, was particularly concerned about some of the changes to the voting system, moving from vetoes to qualified majority voting, but also bringing in new, strengthening the power of the union, the community as it was called at the time, in certain economic areas, laying the groundwork for what became the European Central Bank. This was something that he saw being prepared in the treaty. He was concerned about that. He felt this was going to be limiting Ireland's freedom of action. And another area, and this was the area that I was asked to assist with as a legal expert in the field of foreign policy and defence and neutrality, was the part of the treaty that obliged the government to endeavour to cooperate with other EU countries to form a joint common foreign and security policy. And it was interesting because it was that area and that area alone that the court decided Mr. Crotty should win his case on. And the reason they decided that was because the court looked at what people had voted for back in 1972, and they felt that the remainder of this Single European Act was, broadly speaking, within what they called the contemplation of somebody who voted yes in 1972. This was a kind of logical follow-on from what they had approved then, and so the court said we don't need to have a referendum about that. But what was new in this Single European Act was the extension of the power, if you like, of the community into this foreign policy, security policy and defence area. And the court looked at that and said, well, that's new, and you can't be extending the power of the union or the community at the expense of the people of Ireland without asking their permission.
So when you say within the logical contemplation, what you mean is that people who voted in 1972 couldn't have been expected to imagine that a military dimension could have been added to the European Union or the European community as it was at the time.
Yes, that's correct. The court held that this was outside what it felt somebody could reasonably have had in mind then. And it was, I suppose, a point worth making that the reason that they were able to come to this view at all was because we have quite an unusually strong constitution. And it's strong, I suppose, probably for historical reasons. It was written at a time when Ireland was emerging from under a big power block. And it was written by people, De Valera, a politician himself, was, I think, suspicious as a politician. And he wanted it into the Constitution that any future political power in the land would have to be still under the control of the people from whom all power comes. And so it was written into our Constitution. Uniquely in Europe, in fact, that a private citizen could hold the government to account under these circumstances, and that was something that Mr. Crotty was brave enough to do, risking everything he had at the time, of course. And it's the reason that we now have the opportunity to vote, again, uniquely in Europe, on the Treaty of Lisbon.
So that's the reason why Ireland has a referendum now and other countries don't?
Yes, the reason we have a referendum now is because the Supreme Court ruling has laid down that when a new treaty is put forward, if it contains new elements and if it extends the powers of the European Union, as it's now being called, then the people, again, have to be asked, and they have to be asked for their permission.
Now, that's Joe Noonan, who would be a renowned solicitor and quite an expert in such matters, speaking to Claire O'Brien about the Lisbon Treaty. And we're going to try